All right, I know this is going to sound outrageous, which it is. There's such a thing as iron banding. The red and the black push each other apart, and I think I can see that here. Under a microscope, I think I would be able to see that. Now, I can see some discoloration here, which looks to be predominantly red, which I will explain in a moment. Now, you see right down here it gets black, that little black strip here coming down. Now look at the way this is molded here. And this one is molded here. So if you tipped it up this way, you can see there's a molding here and a molding here, and the black comes running right up through the middle, and then you've got a red blob right there. Now all these, if this thing was tilted exactly straight up and down, you could get that effect. That is what's called iron banding. This is, I've never seen one. This is just a guess, total guess, absolute total guess at this point. But I can show you the root I have of a hair that could be this, because hairs do end up having bands, and I'll show you the bands in the hairs as well. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. At first when I saw this, I said, ooh, that's got to be muscle fibers, you know, sarcomeres. Because this is what sarcomeres look like. Remember what we just saw? And I said, that's pretty close, but actually it isn't. It isn't really close at all. So I started searching, and this is what I came up with. Look, okay. I want you to look carefully at that. You see that spot right there? I say that might be that spot right there, which is a little reddish. All right, and then down here, where my thumb is where the root wraps around, and this one is scaled off. But you can actually see that black underneath here, coming up, and then you see that up here, that reddish spot. This is the root of hair root, and that's the erector pili muscle, and this is the sebaceous gland, and this fits exactly the contour. Now that's why I say you need to see this here, and you need to see down the bottom. You know, this one here is extremely clear, and this has an erector pili muscle. Some do not, but some do. And it depends on where it is on the body of the creature. On us, we don't have them on our face, but on, see it right here? This one here is the erector pili muscle. Right there, so you can go like this when you get scared. This is the sebaceous gland right there. All right, and that ran off. And right at the bottom is the root. So this one is really no question. And there, of course, there's the hair at the top. Now let me show you how hairs actually do form, and it makes some sort of a sense, but I've never seen anything like that before. All right, I showed you my hair follicle. So that's down inside the clay, literally, of the skin. That's just basically clay. A bazillion different layers. I mean, a ton of them. Now, these form in little bumps, and they pop, 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 pop. Now they're covered with the scale, and there's this different kind of animal hairs. So this is a human hair, and I suppose, you know, it's being made in layers, so I don't know, maybe a certain condition caused that iron banding. It would have had to be exactly straight up and down, I would say, otherwise you'd see them a little bit distorted, but that thing was just fabulously perfect. Like I say, you really have to take some time to examine this, and you need some water on here, first of all. That would make a huge difference. But I can see the iron banding. You see the black little tiny Let me see if I can get in there closer. You see how it's dark on the edges? And in between, I don't know, there must be some keratin or kerogens or whatever that creates that scales, I don't know. But hairs do come out in blocks. Now look at this, while I'm doing this, somebody's asking me about the Great Mud Flood, Chasm Leshka. I have to look into that, but this could be, it could be muscle, or it really literally could be a hair. The hair follicle right at the bottom. It's really very, very close to what I'm showing here. If I put my thumb right in this spot, it would be right there. And that's where it wraps up. You can see it's wrapping up here. It's coming up. And it's sort of in here, and then up it comes. And there's that spot, whatever that's doing, I don't know. But I think that's right there, that's the spot. And there's black blood in there, and there's red blood in there. Because, it comes from the papilla at the bottom. Anyway, we need to have a discussion where we can go over everything, how these things are, and have an interactive discussion, kind of in depth. Now, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be doing one tomorrow with Guy Anderson. Now he's into Tartaria and all that stuff, and the mud floods as well. Like I just showed you, somebody's asking about that. All these things now are in a state of flux. Nobody knows what to think. Excuse me. Now I date my stuff by the Triassic era, which was the red bed, the gray clay, and a black cat. It's worldwide. That was a great flood. Everything from there is how I date things. Stuff is above it, that's modern, basically. Stuff that's below that layer is pre-flood. Stuff that's in that layer is the end of life, pre-flood. And as far as I can determine, there was nothing but life. And there is nothing but life, and it's gigantic, it's small, and it's undeniable. That's my claim. This is funny. This just popped up 2 minutes ago on top of. I was going to show. These are actually hairs, and the red and the black is the vein and the artery. This is well known to us mud fossil people. This just came out. Meet the Dragon Prince. Paleontologists discover T-Rex's closest known ancestor. I'm going to tell you right now. This little thing right here. I mean, I'm talking little. This is like tiny. That would have been a parasite living on the creatures that I'm discussing. I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. I am 100% serious. That would have been a parasite. This thing wouldn't even have known it was there. It would have been somewhere in its hair. I'm telling you, that's just a fact. And here's all those little layers, and they could have come from that original piece of striped material. Who could say? But down underneath, way down in there, there's going to be a bulb that's spewing this out. And then on top of here, ancestor, we'll see you later, buddy. And then on top, it shows that that's how they break off. You see, they break off like in just snap, 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 snap. Now, I didn't make this, although I did make this. This is, it's a mud fossil in transition. This was only a very short time, but I wanted to see, could I create crystals, and I could. And would the tendon just go into like an inert state, which it did. So I had all this going, but I could see my other old fossils, and which I show you in a microscope. Let me show you something about the way the tissues can change. Because here you have a lung, and there's a lung. All right, and here's a lung. All right, and they all have fossilized in a different way. And I have dozens and dozens, and there's all kinds of different ways they fossilize. It depends on the conditions they were in, how long they were soaked. Were they in a little basin? Did they boil in that basin? Did they just simmer in that basin? What happened to them in that basin? What other invasive chemistry came into that little basin? What other transition metals? Was there a lot of blood? Was there a lot of synovial fluids? Did they get deeply compacted in loose, wet mud, which is nothing more than bodily flesh that has been boiled off of these creatures, and then get entombed, which is the fascia-facilitated fossilization? I say yes, that is what created these mud fossils. And basically everything you see, basically, even my buddy here, Caesar, he's a goose, I think. I'm going to call him a goose. I call him Caesar Augustus. And there's his feathers even. These are keratins and kerogens, and you got to understand the chemistry and everything. But when they died laying flat like this. You can see his neck and everything if you put it in the right. And I dug into his artery, and it had catalase in there, which is an enzyme, shows it was a living creature at one time. That catalase seems to last forever. And there's his throat. And if you look, you can actually see where the throat went. You see that? And he died flat like this, which all of them did, basically, almost every one of them. That thing is flat as a pancake. And here is that pancake. Right there. Here's that, the lung. Here's the red flappy thing at the end. I took blood out of here and had a DNA test. It is human. This was at the flood stage. That's why it's so flat. It died and it eroded in the body of the creature. And I know that for the fact because there is also right there is the arch of the aorta. The aortic arch. It was set right there, and that's where the heart sits. Left human lung, and it's human. It was DNA tested. There's also CAT scan. CAT scan doesn't show much. It's been pretty well transitioned. But the fascia does not change much in this particular one. Sometimes they completely erode. This other one here completely changed to quartz. Not just the outside, the whole thing. It completely evacuated, so it must have been some very, very seriously boiling hot water, which stripped everything and left just the membranes. You see this? If you look real carefully, you can see, well, you don't have to look real careful, but you can see it very easy. All of those are little alveoli. You see it? The structure does, even like this one, the structure does not seem to give way the way the fleshy stuff does. The structure is keratins and kerogens, and they last very, very well. This actually had blood coming out of it, and that was the blood right there. These things have blood in them. And this one had a really red bloody spot down the bottom here is where I took the blood out of. So this is all real, and I have the my stuff I put in the microscope. Let me show you what happens to this in the microscope versus a different condition. You've seen how they can change to completely silicon. You've seen how they can evacuate all this stuff and leave just a structural body, it's almost like a sponge, and that's what the heart does all the time. And it's wrapped in a rubber bag, which is this normally, and inside is all these little alveoli and blood. So I have them showing every which way. And I have all kinds of lungs. Lungs preserve very well. And it's blood, basically, that is the best preservative. That creates the best preservation of blood. I know it's crazy, but it's true. All right, the more I look at it, the more I'm convinced that that was a hair root that was shown. I would like to be able to see here and better and have water on there and all around the whole thing and see, if we can determine a sebaceous gland, all that stuff. But you got to have more than that one shot. But the one shot was, I have to admit, was spectacular. Now, this is the way hairs form. So I would say if it was exactly flat like this, it may have that layering due to iron banding. Alright, I am going to show you a whole bunch of stuff. Most of the stuff I have here, I'm probably going to start off with the lungs and some microscopic shots of the fabric and how that stuff works. And I'll go into everything, all into the giant things that I have here that are from giants, DNA tested, bits and pieces, CAT scanned. I'm going to go through, a whole bunch of stuff, things that nobody else can explain. Biologists, anatomists, archaeologists, geologists, they have no explanation for almost everything I'm about to show you. So I guess I'm going to probably start off with the lung and show you a bunch of different ways that the lung tissue can turn into stone, mud fossils. All right, you can see that up in the microscope. That is the fabric that coats the lung. All right, and that is the lung right there, is in the microscope. That's the lung. I had DNA tested, CAT scanned. It's 100% for certain it's a human lung. And that is the fabric that coats it when it is very, very fresh, which that lung is. It's very, very well preserved. Flat as a pancake on a back because it was boiled in the Great Flood. All my stuff here has a very similar pattern, that it was all in the same place at the same time, basically, but there are differences. And some of them I'm having a hard time trying to explain, but I'm working on it. Now, what we're seeing there, I'm going to show you some other stuff. And I did create some mud fossils myself, very poorly done, and now I understand much better the process, because this was over 10 years ago. I did this to see if I could recreate it, and I didn't understand at that point it was a boiling hot flood. That's my mistake, and I didn't put enough silicates in. All right, so this is the one live right here in a microscope that I showed you of the lung. Now, let's go down here. All right. Now, what do we have here? I've got a selection of shots in the microscope that came from the microscope primarily. Now, what I just showed you was a lung just like this. You see the black, you see the red, you see they don't touch each other. This is iron banding. They're not fond of each other. Iron banding causes layers. And then you've got connective tissue and so forth in here. But you see how red-blooded that thing was? I mean, that was from that lung that I had DNA tested, which is the one I just showed you now, which is this one right here. And the blood came out of somewhere down in here. I drilled holes in there. Anyway, I didn't scrape it from the surface, and it was exceptional quality. It was really like raw red blood. I was the one who extracted it. I did not do anything wrong. It was very, very clear what it was. Now, this is one kind of condition where well, you can see the difference between this one and another one where it was in a vein area. You see the black stuff, but see, it still, it doesn't. They don't mix. It's not like they become brownish. They stay one, you stay yours, and I'll stay mine. Now, why do we see these colors? Why is it black and red and orange and yellow, that type of thing? Well, it's because they're iron oxides. And that means the iron, which is in your blood, is primarily, your blood is literally saturated with iron. They have different states of oxygen. And when they do, they change colors. Red, yellow, and black primarily. And there's some mixes in there, but not a whole lot. You can see, like even mine, this is what I made. And this was before I knew what I was doing. And this was only maybe a couple of months. I wanted to see if I could start growing crystals, and I could. The crystals started growing on the blood. All right, and you see, and also the tendon stayed pristine. Right? And now this was not done correctly. I do understand the process now much better. But it came out, and it's still a solid piece, like almost like leather. But that's just not, mud fossils turned into stone, and they did because of the silicates. I didn't add silicates, and I didn't boil it for a long time to evacuate it, so the silicates could go in there. And I didn't put any blood in there. And the blood had been withdrawn from that because it was a piece of chicken. It wasn't, you know, they drain them of blood and everything, you get it, and there's not enough blood as there would be in a regular living creature. So everything was different. I didn't boil it. I didn't add the silicates, which rose from the ocean floor, which supersaturated the oceans. Totally, now they realize that happened, but they have no explanation. I do. It's because the Earth was virtually hit by Venus, caused it to, they say in the ancient texts, it stopped rotating for a day, and it splashed everywhere, and that's what created a great flood. Now, I think right now I could create mud fossils, and pretty quick, because I think I understand exactly the chemistry. Now, here's a vein, and there's the valve in a vein. You see this vein right here? That right there is a valve. See all these little dots? Those are blood cells. And this pincher means you can only go one way and you can't go back. That's what veins do. And that, my friends, is a vein, and they're big, and it's you know, I can't remember how big it is, but it's good size. It's not tiny. So the blood cells are bigger than normal too. All right, well, I'm just going to make the claim, if you know how to understand biology, and you understand biology and have studied it as deeply as I have, and the chemistry and all the different bits and pieces that make up creatures' bodies, I mean, it's just stunning. And I will show you right now, this is a membrane. You say, well, what do you mean by that? I say, well, a membrane separates body tissue up here from body tissue down below. And that is body tissue, and that is body tissue, and this right here is a 6 foot thick or so, maybe a little more than that, membrane. And these holes allow transport of fluids in and out between the top and the bottom, because you have to be able to expel things and you have to be able to absorb things. And these are the channels that do that. And can I show that? Yes. Also, I can show this. You see these little bits around here? Those are what I call the slurpees. And they're small, leucine-rich proteins in this layer that is the phospholipids. Phospholipids, fatties, phosphorus and fatty stuff. And it jiggles around and does all this, and still can let things in and shoot things out. And it has some very specific capabilities. I mean, just it's stunning to know what it can take in and what it should be able to spit out. And here's what it looks like anatomically. It's identical. You cannot penetrate this layer or you get invaded. Simple as that. This layer right here is basically your protection between the outside layer and your body flesh. See this phospholipid? Phosphorus in a lipid form, fatty stuff. Bilayer, 2 layers. And there's one layer has water opposed, and one layer sucks it together. I can't explain it, so don't ask me to. Carbohydrate attached, glycolipid, another fatty thing, glycoprotein. Proteins, in this case, I don't know what they do, but proteins normally are building blocks. They got all these little squiggly things in here. I don't know what. I got cholesterol channel proteins. What it does is allow things to come in and out. That's how a membrane works. It has to get rid of stuff, and it has to allow stuff in. It has to. And that's what we saw with this shot here. Now, this was from Tyson Carlson out in Oregon. Tyson's Mudfossil Adventures. He did a lot of work out here. He just totally ignored like everybody. I mean, this whole thing is just nothing but biology. Absolutely 100%. And it's as clear it can possibly get. Okay, this is the problem. This is Geology page. And they said the image displays distinct layers of igneous rock, a result of successive lava flows. Well, no, that's membranes. That's tissue. It's just like this right here. You see this? That's from a gigantic creature, just as the kind of stuff I've just been showing you. And they absolutely refuse to engage about this because it completely overthrows what they have been saying. And this is not just some kind of biological, layers of whatever. These are transition metals, and they are in layers of tissue like this that had a lot of metals. There must have been a heart or lungs or something over in this area, and all these tissue layers took on, instead of just these bland colors, they took on colors of the transition metals, which are the blood. And there's places in a painted desert, and all these places, just amazing colors, absolutely stunning. And they are in layers because each layer has its own transition metal that makes it stable, basically. Now, just so you understand, this is not a known thing until recently. I was studying these balls all over the world. They're everywhere. And I realized, and I could find them in the mud fossils. They were everywhere. Because they are. They're everywhere in the skin. This is skin. And you get down from this keratinized area, and then all of a sudden you hit the membrane, which is, now they call it the interstitium. They never even knew it was here. And then below that you got your white blood cell area, and then you got your little balls, and they're little in us, but they're gigantic all over the world. So I was studying those, and I realized this layer, nobody knew about it. And then I published a paper in 2015 on academia.edu. It was called Fascia Facilitated Fossilization. It was about this giant system that was a fluid-filled highway. Anyway, and then they realized, they said, yeah, it's a newfound organ. In 2018, they said, yes, this layer right here is a newfound organ, and it's the immune system. It basically is. If you get through that membrane, which is this membrane right here, you get through there, you're done. Well, you're not done. You're supposed to have stuff that can come and get you. They knew about these membranes, but they didn't know about this fluid-filled layer where the membrane shoots out these enzymes and whatever it does into that layer, and it's in the lymph system. So basically it's a lymph. And it was unknown, virtually unknown. And when I talk about phospholipids, here it is right here. You see structures in commonly occurring phospholipids, long-chain fatty acid residues. Carbohydrates, everything's carbohydrates. CHs. All these phospholipids, membrane tissue things. And I show these are the balls that are in that. I showed you all these little balls. They're right under the tissue layers, and there's a fluid-filled highway that was unknown. And here they are right here. And when they erode, like in this case, this is skin. That is skin. And right under it is the flesh. And the flesh has the balls. These are the balls. They're all over in this wall. When this erodes away, the balls just sort of lay down in here. And as it erodes back, there they are. And they are in the mud. I got a lung that's falling down here. Hold on a second. All right, now, as the mud just piles up down here, which is that red mud, it's just that's all it is red clay mud. These had a lot of edible stuff on them, so that's why they're covered with moss. They're not stromatolites. They're these same balls like this, which is the Moki marbles. Inside of there is going to be a hard stone, basically. And that's that. But it's covered with a gooey substance which is edible. And up in Alaska, it's covered with green moss, every one of those balls. You see them? They're everywhere, see them? That's because this was skin. That was skin. Everything eroded away except the balls, just like it did in the United Kingdom, the other one I was just showing you. And it leaves these balls growing green moss because it's in fresh water. The other one I showed you is in the ocean. Okay, there's a couple things you have to understand. First of all, not a word you've heard about geology is correct. Secondly, not a word you've heard about the timelines is correct either, because they base it on layers of what they call geology. First of all, to a geologist, everything is magma, volcanic, basalts, and so forth. No, that's a lung. And that's the cavities that come out from the lungs. It's not, I'm not saying you can't have boiling rock and end up with little holes in them, but that's not normally the case. Normally it's like this. This is another one that was a lung. And all the little alveoli filled in with quartz and some other chemicals in here. I think there's some copper in here and so forth. And they filled all those holes. So that happens. This happens. This happens here. This is a guy's his whole lung and his back and everything. You see this? That's a lung, lobes of the lung. All right, you see what I got? That is vesicular textured basalt, which certainly must be from magma. Now, what you're looking at here? That's a bone. It's cut. Well, guess what? Here's what it looks like. Looks like vesicular basalt to me. I don't know what you see there, but I see vesicular basalt. Now, is there any other type of basalt that we can show? Well, I think so. You see that? That's a lung. And so is this. And this is what it looks like where the air entry comes in, just like that. Basically the same thing. And they're showing it from this side. Sometimes they show it from this side. And they're all basically the same. Now the vesicular, I believe, was from a bone, but same basic concept. These are these. And there are all these little holes because there's lungs everywhere. Lungs preserve exceptionally well. You see this? Look at this one. Red, black, yellow, that's the colors of lungs. Anyway, that's mostly lungs are basalts. And also, basalts can be, well, hold on, I'll show you. All right, let's put it this way. Basalts are keratins and kerogens. They're the fabrics that make up the body. And then there's little blood and all the other things that make up your body work. But there's a fabric to your body. There's a structure, and that's what this is. Basalts are structural. Tendons, connective tissue, fabrics that make up your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, all that stuff. There's all kinds of things going on in there, but you have a factory that does all that stuff inside of itself. And it's coated by fascia as well. All right, so there's a lot of things, well, not a lot. It's really quite simple once you start breaking it down. You have body parts. They function as little factories. Every factory is coated so that nobody can get into that factory. And it's coated by a membrane. And I show you those membranes. And then at the end of every membrane, where it attaches to the next membrane, there's like a doorway going out and a doorway going in. And those are those two little, I think I might have shown you, the two little spots at the end of these flaps. You see that flap? Probably not well. But I'll try to remember to show you the two little holes at the end. I've shown it hundreds of times. I can't get anybody to pay attention to what is pretty obvious. Now, the other one I want to show you right now is this one here. Hold on. This is the lungs. These are the lobes of the lungs, and it's eroded. It was laying flat like this, and all the tissue of the chest that was out here, the breasts and so forth, eroded away and turned into mud. You see, down till we get to the actual lobes of the lung. Now, if we turn it to the back, it is the back. And this was what was laying in the mud. And the only reason these bones are preserved, that's a bone. You see it? That's a bone. And there's other little bits and pieces of bone here. Because it was preserved being in the mud. Mud and the fleshiness and the gooiness, the clay part of mud, creates the mud fossils. And this is a mud fossil. And this right here is the latch on this lung. They all have a little tab. They have that little tab that locks them in place. And that was a guy's lung at one time. He died in a flood. And that's about, not maybe a little bigger than us, but not much. And I have them in all, look at this one, hold on. As I said, I showed you that one's flat on the back, so is this one. You see that? See how flat that is? It's another lung. And this one here it's crazy. That's the pleura. All right, remember that fabric? The pleura. This is in the middle between these two. This has all the pleura perfect, which is this gooey stuff. And this has none of the pleura, and it's in here. This got ripped away. You see it? That got ripped away. Let me put a little water on. Hold on. All right, here it is with some moisture on it. They dry up within a matter of a couple of seconds when you put the water on it because they rehydrate. That's the back. That's why it's so flat. It was died in a flood. That's a lot of the way I can tell flood fossils from not flood fossils, which is because there's other ones, I'm sure. But when you find them flat on the back, for that one there, you can, that's an absolute signature. Secondarily, there's another ton of signatures in here. The amount of silicon, the feldspar, all of that stuff, everything plays in a part. Because the feldspar is nothing more than aluminum silicate. Silicates, right here, boiled down from the phosphorus. The phosphorus was the phospholipid membranes. Remember phospho? Well, they decay down to aluminum silicates. And all feldspar is made of aluminum silicates. All of it. Which is keratins and kerogens, basically, from the phospholipids. Like I said, don't believe anything at all now about geology. They're talking about feldspar. Feldspar is the coating on all these rocks, like this bone, like this lung, is all feldspar. Like my buddy here, Caesar Augustus. It's all feldspar. This is feathers and everything. I mean, it's unbelievable. Now, what do they say about feldspar? It's the most abundant mineral group. There's a group of minerals. Feldspar isn't just one. In the Earth's crust. Feldspar is a major component of igneous, metamorphic, and sedimentary rocks. It's membranes in everything. Every one of these layers has feldspar in the layer because feldspar is the membrane. All right, there's the lung in the microscope. I got a little water on it. Here it is up in the screen. Now I'm going to vary the light a little bit and sort of jiggle it around. You see all those little tiny holes in there? This one still has, it's pretty well packed with blood. not packed. There's a lot, most of these are cavities. Hold on, let me dry it up a smidge. You see, those are all cavities. But there's blood in them. There's still blood down inside here. And in areas, I mean, it's saturated with blood, like right here. All that orange is nothing more than blood in this area, nice red blood. Because it fractured there. All right, and you saw all the cavities and so forth here, you see them? All those are nothing more than what you're seeing right there. It's supposed to be a lunar rock they brought back from the moon. As far as I'm concerned, that's a lung. And I did make that mention on here on Wikipedia. That is a lung. I have identical here at Mudfossil University. It is made of collagen, keratin, lots of iron from blood. Now, would they find that in here? I believe so. They might have to dig in here and drill in here a little bit because it's been ionized from radiation being out there in space, and it really, these get cooked. All right, they don't have much protection from the radiation of the sun. Okay, my outstanding friends, another shocker du jour. This came to me today by way of Cindy Williamson. I believe that was her name. And that was Cindy Williamson said, Roger Spur, take a look at this rock. Which I did. And I think I think I have an understanding of what it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Now, what you need to do whenever you take a picture of something like this, first of all, you want to do the ends. The ends are almost the most important part because that's where they attach. You can see muscles and so forth, like where this hair follicle is here. That's where a muscle attached. Okay, that's where the sebaceous gland is. That's where the hair shaft is. But if you just looked at it like from the side here, you're not going to see any of that stuff. You really got to see it from a lot of different angles. Now, I do understand the coloration, and I do understand these little tiny strips. Those are like membranes. And because I'm going to tell you, it's biological. Of that, there, in my mind, is absolutely no question. Now, what is going on there, I don't know. But I can see the blackish stuff, and I can see the reddish stuff, and I'm sure it's got something to do with a vein in an artery, or vein blood, which is black, and artery blood, which is red, because that's the only place well, there's a little bit there. You're going to have some of each in everything. Like I say, you got to see every part of this. Now, it almost looks to me like this could be a calf muscle or something like that, and that attached to the ankle. Okay, my Mudfossil rock star friends, I have been getting kind of overwhelmed with requests to identify things. All they do is tag me with my name and they say, look at this, what do you think? Because there's a lot of people now, they understand these rocks. They're not just rocks. The things that I show you, they're very, very hard to explain. Taking on, the mainstream geology, it just doesn't work. These things are biology. Now I'm going to show you this very clearly. I have things in a microscope, which are literally raw red meat up there. You see that? That's the fascia on it. Now I got to get it. It's in the microscope now, and it's way off. It's way up here in the microscope. So I can get down on here, and there's two little dots down on the very end. Nobody even knows about. Those two little dots right there. That's where the fluid from the lymph system transfers out and back to whatever that specific bag was. And I'm wondering now, is there different chemistry in every different bag? The bag that coats your liver, the bag that coats your lungs, the bag that coats your heart. All of those are membranes. They keep everything else out. What are they keeping in? Is there a special fluid in every one of those, or is it all the same fluid? I think this literally might be a little tiny bit of an organ that only allows the right kind of fluids in and out, or something does something to those in and out fluids, because the lymph is completely separated from the rest of the blood system sometimes. It's a little tricky, but I can explain it. Okay, this was one of the first things I found was a left hand, and it's a human hand because I had a DNA tested. And I got fingertips and so forth, knuckles, and I had some of that CAT scanned. That's the tendon that runs right down the center of your hands. Lay it right back hard, and you can feel it. You rub your hand back, it's right there. This only comes up to about here. All that stuff is gone. Now, the thumb goes off that way, the little finger goes here. This is the bumper pad, same like you have on your hand. Runs right around this way and around over here, and there's a little cut in the middle so that it can pinch. This is what they call a grip skin. I call it friction skin, grip skin, whatever you want to call it. And it's like a rubber glove that's on your hand, and mine as well. And it's on your hands, your feet, and so forth. Now, there's the hand itself. Now, I have also the fingers, and this is one of the fingertips facing this way with the 2D CAT scan, so we can see the tendons. See the two different colors? Same tendon, two different colors. One's going up this way and that way. The colors are because of the blood. You see that hole and this color? You see that hole right there and the color? That's the tendons that let your finger move around, and that's the bone. And that's a 2D CAT scan. I had 3D done as well. And this was, and for Jesse Garant and Associates did this. Absolutely fabulous people to work with, fabulous. Mudfossils, you don't get a whole lot of detail, but you do get a little bit of a membrane change from where the bone is into the flesh, and that's what you're seeing right there. And this is the 3D moving down through it. You can't see a whole lot. Once you get past this area where the bone sort of interfaces and you're deep inside, you really can't see much of anything. That's just a fact, and that's just the way it works in mud fossils. It's nucleophilic substitution and invasion. However, for some reason, the membranes are not affected the same way. You see how all this is almost identical, same material, except where the membranes were. And that's where membranes are to surround your bone. When you get up inside there, it's pretty much gone. So Jesse Garant and Associates did these, and they did them for no charge. They did 7 CAT scans for me, 7 different things. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous people to work with. Okay, now if you don't believe by now, let's take this example. Millions of years in one picture. 100,000, another 100,000, another 100. Every one of these they think was a layer of sediment or something. Well, let me tell you something. First of all, that's totally wrong. This is a tendon. That is a tendon. Now, think about this logically. Why would something like that just be sticking up? There's nothing here, there's nothing here, there's nothing. I can tell you exactly why. Tendons are the toughest thing in the universe. They are unbelievably tough. That right there, and this right here is the center of that tendon. Right here started muscle. That's the abrupt transition. I'm going to show you this. I'm not making this up. I can prove what I'm talking about. Over here would have been the bone. This was, I believe, a shoulder joint or some kind of a joint tendon, and I have one here in my shop that I'll show you exactly the same. No difference whatsoever. Only I still have the muscle and I still have the bone. All right, this is not millions of years. This is muscle from here over to here, out this way. There's a lot of connective tissue here until it gets to the complete, almost solid sarcomeres. It takes a while, and then you get the sarcomeres, and that's the bundles here. Now, from here back to here, the round ball is the tendon. Now, there's the bone is here, and that's in this shot here. The bone is here, and you see the ball? That's this ball right here. That ball is attached to this ball, which is in this shoulder socket. I think this is the shoulder. I think this bone can go this way and that way. You see how it's latched in here? So it'll go this way and that way, and sort of, which you have to do. You have to go all kinds of different ways in your joints. It's just stunning how well it works. And from here, it has to be able to do this and that. That's why you have to have all these layers, because they're going to go this way and that way, and they're going to slide against each other. All right, and that's up here is where the blood supply enters to service the muscle. You see that? That's brown. That's not red there. That's brown. You see the difference in color? That's just nothing but tendon. Then you get to here, and it's muscle. The muscle erodes away, the bone erodes away, and you end up with this sticking up in the air with that round ball on the one side. And they say millions of years. Do not believe a word of geology anymore. Not a single word. Or history. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this. I've read many, many accounts in the ancient texts of giants and dragons. And right in the Bible, the first thing it says is there were giants inside the earth in those days. And later there was more giants in the earth. Not walking around on earth, which there was, but it was later. In the beginning, there were giants in the earth in those days, which is basically the earth. And even Jesus said, once you come to discover the earth, you discover a corpse, and you discover the body. Now, I asked, do most cultures say giants and dragons were real? And it says, yes. They had stories of gods, giants, and dragons. Whether they were considered real depends on the culture and interpretation, and yada, yada, yada. And they say, oh, it's all silly, basically. And that, could ancient culture stories of giants and dragons be real? Spoiler warning, the conclusion is there were no giants or dragons ever in history, beyond people finding dinosaur bones and imagining. Well, you can go and imagine easily Typhon in the desert attacking the fish called Ares, who was the god of war. Typhon was the offspring of Gaia and Tartarus, all written in history and laying in the desert. All right, this is northern Africa, the Straits of Gibraltar, Mediterranean Sea. What are we looking at here? Typhon. He runs from here to there. That's his whole entire body. These are his legs. I'll show you his dragon scales in a minute. He was attacking the gods. Exactly what was written about in the ancient texts. He said he attacked them, spitting a great jet of fire, and the gods changed themselves into animals to try to get away. Ares changed into a fish and was spit on by Typhon. That's Ares' back right there. There's the fin. And there's all the venom coming down from Typhon, and there's his head. All right, there's his nose. There's his flared red eye. Exactly what it says, he got a flared red eye. That's his throat. It goes down there, and it's called the Dragon River, the Dra River. It runs all the way down because that's his throat had to run all the way down. And it says Zeus, with his great and mighty sword, cut his throat, and there it is right there. And I always talk about the red and the black. They don't like each other. They stay away. That cut a vein and an artery, and the artery is still running out a little bit red today, and it hates the black. The black and the red don't get along. You see that there, right there, is that separation zone. All right, you see it right there? That's iron banding. Now, his throat runs all the way down. These are all scales. This is just runoff from a dead, decaying body. And if you ever saw one that died and nobody knew it for a couple of weeks, that stuff runs out. It's all lymph fluid. But right up here is where his throat starts. And these are all dragon scales. And up over here are dragon scales. You see that? And what these two things are, I don't know, but they're some kind of organs. I'm almost sure of that. These are all the scales. And you see they're notched. That way there he can bend his throat and stuff like that. Otherwise, if it was just one solid set of scales, I couldn't do it. Runs all the way down, and it has that flashy looking stuff here. And you see those on the parades in China and so forth. They have that really fluffy looking stuff running down the side. It goes all the way down to his stomach. And his stomach is all the way over here. You see it? It's all dragon scales running the whole length. It's not just hills and valleys, my friends. These are dragon scales. Now, what it means to you, that's up to you. What it means to me is that these things they were wrote about were factual, not just for their entertainment. This was real. And this is serious. And that's biology. If you can't understand that, if you think that was just runoffs from the hills and valleys, then you need to study. Well, forget about it. You're never going to understand it. You know, your mind is made up if you can't look at this and look at it carefully and thoughtfully. The whole thing runs across, and they said that. They said his head often brushed the stars. These are also dragon scales out here. This is his tail. Now his tail was slashed too. You see the blood coming out of here? That's all runoff from blood. Blood is different than just the lymph fluids. Lymph fluids have like just a different texture to them. The blood is totally different. But that's his whole body. And they said he had huge, long viper coils that ran out, gigantic ones. And yes, he did. And this is some kind of leathery surface that was on his coils. Those, my friends, are not just simple sand dunes. Let it settle in for a second. This is the hide of something. What it is the hide of, I don't know. But if you talk to somebody who is a tanner and looked at this stuff in a microscope, I've looked at a lot of different leather, different types of leather in the microscope. But the leather I can see basically has been worked, rolled and dyed and all that stuff. Anyway, this is that's the story of Typhon and the fish who was the god of war, Ares. Now, I'd like to know if the Triassic layer is underneath this fish or over the top. Same thing with the dragon. I would have to assume both of these things happened at the same time. They fell from heaven or whatever they did, and they landed here in the desert. I can't see them walking around eating all day long on the earth. A lot of this stuff I can't explain. But the things I can explain extremely well, and I need to have them discussed. That's the fish. Here's his fin. Here's his tail. And the scales go this way. That means the fish has to be going that direction. And it is. Tail is here. All this stuff was written about, and it's everywhere. It's not just here. It's not just there. It's everywhere. And I understand they had just had a very serious earthquake down here, Drake's Passage, which has some, well, I don't know, you make up your own mind. All right, I guess I'm going to leave it at that. We really have to reconsider everything. Like I said, the timelines, the geology, that's not just hills and valleys. Look at that. And they say, oh, those are just flat irons. I say, well, call them whatever you want. Those are dragon scales. Oh, no, they're everywhere. Well, there was dragons everywhere. And literally, that's true. Now, may I show you my finger, big finger? I don't know if I did or not. That's that 3-foot long finger. Still got the fingernail on it. And when I broke this piece off to get blood, that's the grip skin. It popped right off just like that. It's just flat. It's about that thick, and it still has the fingerprints on it. And here's what it looked like. It's 3 feet long from here to here, and that's that little pad right there that goes so that you don't bump your bones together. Vein and artery, all the way around. Perfect fingernail. All right, and it was 3 feet long from here to the very front of the tip. Gigantic. And like I say, the grip skin is right here. My thumb is about as wide as a fingerprint ridge. And it broke just like this. It just popped right off. When I smacked it with a hammer, it snapped right off. And it was like it was glued on there. Because it is. It's just and that's why on my big hand, well, this is the big one. This is 3 feet long, the single tip of the finger. The other one is 4 feet wide, the whole hand. But it still has the grip skin. It's very obvious to see it. It's peeling off. It's like somebody painted it on there. Nobody painted that. That is the heavy-duty skin.